Jennifer Sienna's here in Lewisburg, Tennessee, and this is my very first time ever going live. So it could be a real hoot watching me goof this up. So hopefully everything's working well. And my adorable husband is in the background. He is um, he is going to be there to ask questions and to um, he's going to be there to ask the questions on the background. Um, I have had some, sorry, technical issues here. I've had some people write in questions ahead of time, which was nice because I wasn't sure if anybody would actually get on here. So he'll be paying attention to that. And can you see that on your thing? No? So you can't tell if you're live? Huh. So, huh. I don't know if it's even working, but hopefully it is live because my husband is on the group and he's not seeing anything. So I don't know how this works, but hopefully it's working. So anyway, a couple. We'll just start with the questions, I guess. This is part of this is the Providence launch for my newest book, Book 3 in the Apple Hill series, and so we're just doing a launch here. So do you want to start with a question?
Sure. Um, so this is a multifaceted question. I'll just give it to you all at once, see if you can handle it. Um, what does your writing schedule entail? Do you write on certain days or at a particular time? And do you write more when you get closer to your deadline? Are you a pressure person or do you like to be overly prepared?
I don't know if I like to be overly prepared, but I do like to be ahead of the game a little bit. So even before I ever got published, I had a set schedule for writing. I would try to write 8 hours a day, at least 4 days a week. So I try to keep that schedule. Mornings are my best time, so I will do mornings and start usually around 8. We get up pretty early. We're up at 4:30. We get up at 4:30 in the morning, do a Bible study, do a little workout. I get my tea or whatever, and then I get to work. So I write probably about 4 hours in the morning, and I try to do at least 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And if I am on a deadline, definitely I end up writing more because weekends get in there, and there's other things to take care of, and so yeah, it makes a difference. I do try to write at least 4 days a week though, and on a deadline, I'm plugging in more often than that. So does that answer the question thoroughly?
I think fairly well. Do you stick to a real tight schedule, like day in, day out? Do you have a weekly routine you do?
I kind of do Monday through Thursday. Sometimes Friday's a fun day if I don't have anything that has to be in right away. So Monday's I'm sorry, Friday is my fun day, and Saturday we try to do things around the house, and Sunday, of course, is church and everything. But for the most part, but I can be, working at home on my own. I can be spontaneous. I can take a day and here and there and switch it around, which is what I've been doing for the last several weeks actually.
Mm-hmm.
So hope that answered that.
So do you have a favorite location or place that you like to do your writing?
Um, in the warm weather, we have this nice outside patio that we had constructed last year, or the year before. I love to sit outside and write when I can. It just makes me feel like I'm not trapped in the house all day. So when the weather's good, I love, love, love to be outside. I was writing last summer. I was writing, working on something, and I looked up, and there was this little fawn that had wandered into the back and was literally right behind me. I was just shocked by that. The hummingbirds come in, and the just wildlife, the birds, and it's nice to be out there. It can be distracting, but it's nice to be out there. So I enjoy that for sure. And yeah, so that's what I enjoy doing. But inside, I don't do well sitting at the desk for too long. I have a recliner that I can put a pillow on my lap and I can work away, and so I'm not with my head down. My husband, my chiropractic husband, is all about posture, and so the more I can keep my head up, the better off I am. So I hope that answers that question.
So do you prefer silence or do you like to have music in the background, or what is your favorite kind of atmosphere to work in? A busy coffee shop? I mean, where do you like to work?
I would love to be able to go into a coffee shop and work, but I get nothing done because I don't do well with noise. So it really does have to be silent. You know, I'm okay with the birds or whatever. Um, I know there are some writers that work with music. They like to have music playing in the background, but that, and I can tune that out. I can tune that out pretty well. Um, but I prefer silence. I think I work better with silence, but for the most part.
Yeah. Well, you have a drink in your hand. One of the questions was, do you have a special treat or drink that you like to kind of keep with you as you're working?
Not really. Afternoon, I have a little tiny cup of coffee. In the mornings, I might have a cup of tea, but mostly just drink water all day. I try not to do the eating thing where I'm eating while I'm writing because then you forget how much you've actually eaten pretty soon. I do know a well-known author, Deborah Rainey. She's one of my favorite people. Such a sweet woman. She will will get a handful of M&Ms every time she finishes 1,000 words, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So I try not to go there, but yeah.
So I know that you have a watch that counts your steps every day.
Do.
Do you try to take a break and get some physical activity to get your brain woken up again, or do you just plow through sitting there for hours and hours and hours on end?
There are times, if I can, that I'll stop, and we have a treadmill here out in our garage. I'll go out and I'll do a walk, or if the weather's really nice. Yesterday morning I actually went out and did some weed eating because I needed some outdoor time. So I can't, I will sit if I have to, but it's hard. I'm just not a sitting down kind of person. My kids always joke around that I never, even when they were growing up, didn't sit still very long to hang out with them, and it was a frustration. But I have too much energy, but it's hard to sit all day. You do know that now sitting is the new smoking, meaning that people that sit for extended periods of time every day, it's just as unhealthy as smoking is to the body. So keep that in mind. If you sit all day, find a way to get up and move.
So along those lines, do you ever struggle with writer's block? Do you ever just get stuck?
I do.
And if you do, how do you overcome it?
Prayer. Pray first, because a lot of times God will bring those answers to me. Sometimes if I do a mindless activity, I can go out and I can pull weeds or do some weed eating. I get a lot of great writing ideas while I'm weed eating, believe it or not. They just come to me. But so usually it's just, sometimes if you power through, that works. Sometimes you need to step away. Maybe I'll do a different project. I'll work on a blog post, or I'll work on a marketing thing, something that takes me away from that. So I think when you're focused too much on it, you have a hard time breaking that cycle. So that's what I will do.
And haven't you told me at times that your characters will take over your story, and all of a sudden you're really not writing it at all, but your characters are sort of doing their own thing?
Well, one of the questions I think is later on in there, it asked how I decide how many characters are enough and all that. Every time I've ever written a book, characters will appear out of nowhere that I was not expecting. And when I wrote Illusions, there was a character that came along 2/3 of the way in the book. And if you read Illusions, you know about it was a pastor who was in the Carmel area, and he was an older man, and he really spoke to Corey's heart in that story. I had no idea that he was going to be in the story until he actually appeared, and those are God sightings for me. That's why I try not to get too stuck in my structure of a story, because you have to be open to what the Holy Spirit brings in, and that character of Jonas was completely unexpected. And then his son coming in, all of that just kind of came up out of nowhere, and which was, for me, that's what's exciting about writing, is when somebody appears that I wasn't expecting, and it's like, wow, I get to be as stunned as the reader does, because I don't have that figured out yet.
I know that you work hard at understanding your characters' personalities. How do you create their personalities, and how do you stay consistent with their behavior relative to their personality?
That's a really good question. If you you may or may not know this, but I actually have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and it's always fascinated me. My mom always used to say people that are into psychology, it's because they need to fix themselves. And maybe that's true, but I love personalities. I love learning about personalities and how they work. And the Enneagram is something, actually, Chris, that you introduced me to years ago. Actually, not him, but a doctor he used to work with brought up the idea of an Enneagram, and that is, and if you've never heard of it, it's on a circular thing, and there's 9 personalities, and they cross. You know, everybody is mostly one of something, although you have wings. It's kind of complicated if you've never heard about it, but this is the book I use. I used to be just an Enneagram. Now this one I'm using is from a Christian perspective, and I think it even adds more validity to writing Christian fiction when you can understand the brokenness of a person. So, for example, my personality type is a 1, and that's a perfectionist, and I've never been real thrilled with that. I'd rather be more easygoing. And Chris is his personality type is a 9, and a 9 is the peacemaker, and so they're easy to get along with. They don't like to argue. That comes with some challenges. So what I do when I start writing a book is I will decide what kind of personality I want my character to have, and then I will study up on it. I use this, the Enneagram. I also use these, the Myers-Briggs, and this is what I learned. Myers-Briggs was what I learned in my classes. I never heard of Enneagram until later, but Myers-Briggs is one of those personality characteristic types. You know, you're either an introvert, extrovert. I can't remember all of them. There's intuitive or sensing or judging or thinking, or there's all these different things. But these books, it's called Please Understand Me, that comes with the Myers-Briggs. So I will usually cross-reference and go through both of these, and I'm not always true to what the character personality is, because things just reveal themselves throughout, but at least I try to start with that.
How do you decide what the focus of your book is going to be as you're starting to think about a new book coming along? And just how do you do that?
That's a good question. So the book I just finished, that I turned into my publisher, it's called Night Songs. It's going to be the first book in the new series, which takes place here in Tennessee. That one, there's inspiration that comes from that's a hard question. My first 3 books in the Apple Hill series, the first book I wrote is actually Providence, and I rewrote it, and that had been inspired by my brother's suicide. The second book I wrote was Illusions, and that was inspired by my daughter's traumatic brain injury, and I wasn't sure how I was going to work that out. And I really believe God brings to me what it is he wants me to focus on, and I just try to stay open to that, and the ideas start coming, and the story formulates, and then you got to think of the conflict and how would that work and what would be better there. So Surrendered was actually inspired by a character I'd written into Providence that never made the cut. Like, I cut her out, but my critique group at that time loved her so much, they said, oh, I hope she's going to have her own book, or she's going to come back, and that's where Tess came from. So I'm never quite sure. I have to get something in my mind, then I have to ruminate on it. It used to be an incident. Now it's more like a career, because I think I would need to branch out. So with Night Songs, the gal that's in the main character in Night Songs, she is a home interior designer, and that's where it starts. But it switches over, because here in Tennessee, and I don't know where you live, it may be the same, but here in Tennessee, people love vintage stores. We're not talking antique necessarily, vintage. Like, I bought an old China hutch from the 1960s, which would not be considered an antique, but it's vintage, and I repainted it and reworked it, and I used it in our guest bathroom. So people love that kind of stuff, old windows, old doors. So I thought, well, that's something a lot of people really enjoy. So I wanted to bring that element into the story. So that's partly how that happened. But the storyline itself gets formulated as I think on it and meditate on it, and just continually marinate on the characters and what could be happening, and the what if questions. So
you may have told us a story before in your writers group, but just briefly tell the experience you had at your brother's funeral when God spoke to you about
Oh.
your story.
Yeah, well, my brother, Chris had, when we first got married, Chris had encouraged me to stop teaching and write full time because that was what God had put on my heart. And he said, "Well, if this is what God has put on your heart, don't you think you should do that?" And it wasn't long after that that my brother committed suicide. And I didn't have anything really going with a book yet. I didn't know what I was doing. I was trying to find my way. I had gone to a conference. I had tried to write a story that was based more on my life, which was who wanted that because it was just too hard. And so when my brother committed suicide, he and I were very close growing up. We were like twins. He was only a year older than me, and we spent all of our time together. And I just worshiped the ground he walked on when I was growing up. I just loved him. And so when he passed away, his wife asked if I would speak at his funeral. And so I had written all the antics, and I've posted this before. It's been on blogs, but I've written all these antics about what he had done and what, And when I got up at the funeral and I shared that, I started to step off the podium, and I clearly heard the Lord put on my heart, "This is your story." And so that's what inspired Providence. Even though, just so the readers know, um, there is nothing in that story that's factual. It's, aside from, yes, there was a suicide and it was the father of some kids, and yes, that's true. But that was an inspiration. I don't want people to think that that was a true life story because it wasn't. But the idea of it, I wanted to share the idea of how suicide affects a family, not just a parent, but a child, how it comes in. I had people tell me, I actually had a woman tell me at Bible study that my brother was going to hell because he committed suicide. And I thought, how many people really believe that? And so I brought that. That's why Emily, who is in the story as a 13-year-old girl, she's got a viewpoint as well. And I wanted her to be that voice of, that questioning voice, because to me it comes, I don't know. Did that answer the question? I'm like babbling now.
Yeah. So was that book, was Providence a difficult one for you to write? Were you struggling with the whole subject and just the memories of what kind of inspired the story?
It was it was hard to write, and I've blogged about this, so you probably, if you've probably already heard this, but I wrote it and it was dark. In fact, I just posted a couple days ago the first original 16 pages of that story on the readers group and on my blog post. It was dark, and it was dark because I felt I was angry with my brother. I was really angry with him for taking his life and not understanding what led up to it yet. But so it was hard, but it was cathartic. And then the process of the rewrite, and then one more time rewrite, is when I had seen, my faith had grown, and I saw that God uses every pain that we go through, every difficulty we have. He will use that for our good and his glory. And then it gave me hope, and then in the hope came the story. So it was difficult, but it was good. It was therapeutic. It was like I actually was receiving psychological therapy as I was going through the process of writing it, which, they tell you should journal when you're having a hard time, and it's the same idea, just did it in story form.
Yeah. And that was one of the questions somebody else had put in there about, is it therapeutic for you to write about personal topics? And what about your other two stories? Did you find that therapeutic also to talk about Nicole's accident and to kind of just go back and relive some of those memories?
It actually, it was Nicole's accident. Mostly surrendered was not based on anything actual that had happened, but illusions, the glimmer of the idea was a traumatic brain injury. And I had walked through that with my daughter, who had just turned 18, and I had journaled everything that we went through. My vice principal, I was teaching at the time, my vice principal the very first day brought a journal to me because she said, "You may need this. You may need to see the progress she's making," because she went from this vibrant 18-year-old girl to a newborn baby, couldn't walk, talk, eat, drink. She couldn't do anything. So telling that story from the other end of it, knowing the blessing that came from that, knowing what God had done in the midst of that, It was a joy. But I'll be honest, there's a few times in that story when I was writing it, I was choking up and crying because there was a lot of the emotions they're still something you've lived through. So but that makes it easier to write about it. I mean, it's hard to write when you haven't gone through emotions. These young people who write this stuff that's filled with emotion blows my mind. It's like, how do they do that when they haven't, well, maybe they have lived through it, who knows. So yes, definitely therapeutic to write.
Yeah. So just to shift a little bit, when you're in the middle of a story, do you find it difficult to sleep at night sometimes, or do you find your mind really, in a sense, preoccupied with the story while you're going about the duties of your day?
You could probably answer that better than me, huh, babe?
Yeah, but I'm going to let you do it.
How many times have I gotten up at 1 o'clock in the morning? Sometimes I can put it to sleep. I'm better now than I was when I first started. I don't get worried as much, but often I will wake up. In fact, last night I woke up at midnight, and first thing I did this morning was jot down an idea I had, because I'm working on a Christmas novella now, and I jotted down an idea for that, because I woke up at midnight and I thought about it. But a lot of times I will wake up and my mind will be reeling, and wondering how I'm going to work this out and how can I make more conflict. The whole thing with a story is conflict. If you do not have real conflict, you have no story. And but you don't want to make it so conflict filled that it doesn't make sense either. But yeah, so there are times that our dog is being kind of silly. There are times that I am awake at night wondering about it, but I do better now. I can usually pray myself back to sleep and say, okay, I can't fix this right now. Just hopefully have this in the morning. I don't write anything down. I'm afraid I'll wake my husband up, so I don't stop and jot things down in the middle of the night.
So speaking of your characters, let's talk about one in particular. Let's talk about Melissa Bainbridge. How did you actually come up with the character of Melissa, and did you have a picture of her in your mind, or how did that all come together?
That was a process, actually. It's kind of funny. I got a picture of Melissa in my mind, and I like to have actual pictures. You know, there are websites like Pixabay and Unsplash where you can go and you can download royalty-free pictures for free. They are giving these away. These are people like photographers that put this stuff out there, so maybe their name is going to get to be well known, but they have that out there for us to collect. And there are a lot of great pictures on there, but I could not find one that matched my visual of Melissa. Melissa was a kind of waif-like, really small gal with short pixie-ish brown hair, and I couldn't find anything that matched that. And so here's what's kind of funny. So here's the cover of Providence, if you haven't seen it, and I described in because my publisher will send a thing asking about the cover. You know, what does your character look like? What kind of things are they into? And so they can create a cover. And they came up with Melissa. I couldn't find a picture of Melissa, but they came up with what I had in my mind. And I thought, I mean, I know you don't see her whole face, but you can kind of see the lower part of her face, and her hair short, and it was perfect. So I was pretty impressed with that. I thought, wow, that was pretty cool. This actually, by far, so far, this is my favorite book cover. They just did a tremendous job with this book cover. So
yeah, cool. So let's shift a little bit again and talk about your growth as a writer. And I remember the first conference you went to, and you were sure that you had a terminal disease the day you were driving down there, and you didn't want to go.
Not terminal,
But
just the flu.
You've been to many conferences and retreats, so talk a little bit about that.
When I first decided to quit teaching to write, a woman from church came up to me, and she had always wanted to go to this conference called the Mount Hermon Christian Writers Conference, and she told me about it. I'd never heard of it. I'd never been to a conference, and I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to go to that. Well, by the time it came time to actually go, I'm an introvert, and put me in a crowd of people I don't know, and I'm telling you, I feel like I'm in 6th grade again, all geeky and awkward walking into a classroom mid-year, because that's what happened to me. and I had to go to this conference, and they room you with people you don't know, and um, I would have to meet people. Well, driving down to that conference, it was in Santa Cruz, and so it was probably about a 3.5 hour drive from where we lived. I started getting aches and pains, and I felt sick to my stomach, and I was sure I had the flu. I was absolutely sure I was going to be sick as death, and I wanted to go home. And that night, Debbie Maycomer, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but she's an author of she's a well-known author. Debbie Maycomer was a keynote speaker. She was a keynote speaker, and Jerry Jenkins was a keynote speaker. And she got up there and she said, you are a writer. You have to believe that you are a writer. And she told her story, which is incredible. I'd love to share. I don't know that she shared it, but it's an incredible story of how she became a writer. And it gave me the confidence. You know, I felt like I was in the right place. I finally calmed down. I could hold food down, and I did okay. But my roommates were both published authors, and I was not. And they were both night people, and I was a morning person, so they completely roomed us wrong. And I would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, sneak my shower in, and sneak out before they woke up. So I would, because they were coming in at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'd sneak out. And but that was my very first. The following year I went, and I stayed 3 extra days and did the Head Start program. I went most every year after that, and it got easier and easier. I got a tribe of people, but I learned so much. I learned a lot about the craft of writing. I learned about marketing. I learned to make connections. I learned to be okay with me, and I learned that God was going to make it happen if it was His plan, in His timing, not in my timing. So that was it was a great learning experience for me. Yeah.
And you continue to just grow in your desire to want to become a better writer.
I did, and I entered the Genesis contest, and the Genesis contest is unpublished authors with ACFW, which is American Christian Fiction Writers, and they hold a contest. And so I entered that Genesis contest, and I was up for a finalist, and I went to the conference, which was actually in St. Louis, so I had to fly. I had always gone right there in town. I was with Inspire Writers, and so I was able to go to conferences right there near where I lived. I didn't have to actually travel. Well, I had to fly and travel for that conference, so that's what I had done with that. But again, you learn a lot. But Mount Hermon was a unique experience. It's up in the Sierra, or up in the redwoods of the what do they call that? It's coastal redwoods. It's up out of Santa Cruz. It's beautiful. The campus they've been doing it for years and years and years. But when you go to St. Louis, you're in like a big Hyatt. It's very cold. The conference rooms are like being in a huge college classroom. There's no warmth to it, so I really preferred the other ones. But yeah. Does that answer?
It does. Yeah.
Okay.
It does. So we're coming down to the last question that somebody has sent in. If anybody else wants a last minute question answered, have a message and we can do that.
If you have any questions, type it in.
Type it in. But this question is totally off topic of the book. Somebody wants to know about your T-shirt.
Oh, really?
So maybe show it to them so they can see it.
Let's see my T-shirt here. It's Casting Crowns. And I don't know, with all the stuff that was happening with COVID, things got closed down. Well, was it last fall? We work with a group of people at this church called Hopetown. We help help provide food for people that are shut in, and so that's not our home church. They don't actually do a Sunday service there, but because we help, the pastor that runs that, he had bought. Casting Crowns was showing up in our little tiny Lewisburg town at the movie theater, the outdoor movie theater, and they did a concert, and we were invited to go, and it was incredible. I mean, everybody was kind of still in that bogged down with the COVID thing, and there's all the fear, and there's but they had built a whole stage out there, and you show up and you bring your lawn chairs and you sit outside under the stars, and that's why I think it says A Night Under the Stars was the name of it, was Casting Crowns. And I love Casting Crowns, and so it was a blessing to be able to go and see that. So, yeah, that was kind of cool. and Lewisburg's we're not a big town, you know. I mean, we're an hour south of Nashville. We, it, I mean, no one's from Lewisburg except those people that are from Lewisburg, pretty much. So for them to come here was like, whoa, really? Casting Crowns is going to come and see us here in Lewisburg. It was very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so at the moment, no new questions. So we want to just wrap it up and
Yeah, you know, for those of you, few people that showed up, Rebecca, yay! Thank you for showing up. For those that showed up, I appreciate you, and I hope this answered some questions. I will. I think I can record it. I was told that I can go ahead and actually set it as a recording. I'll stick it on my website today, so people can still see it if they want, and I'll upload it there to YouTube. So I hope this helped. It's uncomfortable for me. It's all about me. I don't like the all about me thing, but this was suggested by a lot of people. You know, marketing, you should get out there and do live. So I appreciate those of you who listened, and you can always still get a hold of me, email me, text me if you have comments or questions or whatever, and I appreciate you showing up. So thank you so much.
Alicia just said hi.
Oh, hi, Alicia.
From California.
From California, yay. Love you guys that showed up. Thank you, and I hope that you got your questions answered, and always here to answer more. So till next time, have a great, blessed Saturday. Bye.